Hello and welcome to What's the Story? We're an inquisitive bunch of hosts from the What's the Story team on a mission to uncover stories about faith and courage from everyday people. And to help us do just that, we get the privilege to chat with amazing guests and delve into their faith journey, the hurdles they've overcome, and the life lessons they have learned along the way. Now, if you enjoy our podcast, don't forget to subscribe and sign up for our newsletter on our website, which is what'sthestorypodcast.com. It's your direct line to the latest episodes and detailed show notes, and they all get delivered straight to your inbox. And the best part, it's absolutely free. What's the Story is brought to you by Crowd Church. We understand that stepping into a traditional church might not be everybody's cup of tea. And that's where Crowd Church steps in, providing a digital sanctuary, a safe space to explore the Christian faith, where you can engage in meaningful conversations rather than just simply spectating. So whether you are new to the Christian faith or are in search of a new church family, we invite you to visit us at www.crowd.church. And if you've got any questions, just drop us an email at hello@crowd.church. We're here to help and would genuinely love to connect with you. And now, without further ado, let's meet your host and our very special guest for today.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of What's the Story podcast. I'm your host, Sunne, and today we have another inspiring guest with us, Julie Sunne. Julie has been through some incredibly challenging times, and she's here to share her journey of resilience, faith, and the lessons that she's learned along the way. Julie, it's so great to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Sadaf. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So where are you calling in from today?
I live in Northeast Iowa in the States.
Okay. And what's that like? What's life in Iowa like?
Life in Iowa is getting really pretty. It's greening up. We're probably in the 60s today, I think, low 60s. And right now it's kind of foggy and overcast. So I think it's going to be one of those days, which we need those too. We've been getting a decent amount of rain. We were in a drought and now we're kind of getting a decent amount of rain again. So the farmers are happy. It's a kind of a rural farming community.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So should we jump in?
Please. Yes, let's do.
All right, Julie, why don't you start by telling us a bit about your early life and how your faith journey began?
Yeah. Well, I've actually spent most of my life, well, all of my life in Iowa, living in Iowa, and I grew up one of six children in on a dairy farm in Northeast Iowa, and it was a wonderful upbringing. I really enjoyed it. We had a built-in ball team, so we played together. We just really enjoy. Of course, we fought together as siblings do, but my parents were loving parents, very hardworking. They really instilled in us a hardworking ethic. I grew up in the church. I was baptized and raised in the Catholic faith, and that you know, as we were in church every Sunday, but I would say now looking back as I grew up, I knew the Lord in a very authoritative, sovereign, creator way, but I didn't really walk. It wasn't a faith where I was walking very close with Him. I was going to church every Sunday, um, but in the church that I went to, it wasn't, you didn't read the Bible for yourself. You didn't really understand. You didn't really, I didn't anyway. I should just speak to me for me. I did not grow real close to the Lord during that time or walk daily with Him. It was more of kind of a Sunday faith, I would say.
Mm.
And, but I did love and revere the Lord and respect and worship Him. I would say it's more of, I didn't I didn't think of Him on a daily basis. I didn't live my life in obedience to Him on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. So would you say it was it wasn't really a relationship with the Lord. It was more
Yeah.
just knowing that He was sovereign.
Yeah,
Would you
that
say?
that's exactly what I'd say. I knew he was
Mm,
sovereign. I knew, I respected the fact that, he was in control of everything, that he had created everything.
mm,
There was I think a healthy fear of him, which I think a fear of the Lord is
mm-hmm,
definitely biblical and a very good thing. But there wasn't the intimacy, I would say,
mm-hmm,
the realization that he was walking in my daily moments,
mm,
that he was with me in my daily moments. It kind of felt like he was in church and and when I was in church, we were together. But when I was in my daily life, there wasn't a whole lot of thought to spiritual things
mm.
and to the Lord.
Wow. So how did that evolve? How did that change into a
Mm.
place where you had a strong, ongoing relationship with the Lord?
Yeah, it really didn't change until my life was turned upside down
Mm,
and I was thrown into a deep pit of depression. I think that as the Lord is sovereign, He knew what I needed,
mm,
and He provided that. And uh, so that so like I said, I had a good childhood. I went to college and met my husband. We got married, and we decided after a few years we were going to start a family. And we were just elated when I got pregnant, but that was quickly turned to
mm,
great sorrow. It wasn't I was probably about 10 weeks along when,
mm,
I found out we were losing the baby. The baby did they couldn't find a heartbeat, and that was it was kind of like it was just immediate flip from elation to having, everything's going right, and gonna have this beautiful baby,
mm,
and then just devastation when I found out that she was not gonna live.
mm,
And I went into a deep depression, and I did not want to really function anymore. My husband and I were on different pages in our grief, and so I felt very alone in that. I have very supportive family on both sides. Both my husband's family and my family are very supportive, but they had not really experienced miscarriage.
mm,
And nobody we knew at that time had had a miscarriage in either of our families. And so they didn't know how to relate. And I was thrown into a deep depression. My world I describe it as my world kind of turned colorless, I guess. And the color sort of washed out of it, and I didn't even wanna get up. And it I the Lord knew that I needed to be out of control, that I needed to realize I had no control
mm,
in order to get my attention, I think,
mm,
and to help me start figure out who He was. So out of this deep depression, He met me in a dream,
mm,
and He started to pull, me out of my I guess at that point, I was probably in kind of a self-pity and,
mm,
in my grief, and He started pulling me out of that.
mm.
And, so, yeah, so I can go into a little bit more of the dream if you want me to. It was just a kind of a very special, special time, and like I said, I was in bed, I didn't wanna move on, and the
Mhm,
Lord, in a dream, gave me an image of my little girl,
mhm,
and it was it was absolutely beautiful. He held her. I s He didn't say it was him, but the hands that were holding her, it was just so beautiful,
mhm,
and she was held up for me to see, probably about 3 months old, and I had the words impressed on me. Now I didn't hear this audibly, but the words were impressed that, um, here she is. She's beautiful. She's with me.
mhm,
Sarah is right here with me, and she's fine. Now you need to get up and live.
mhm,
And I had said I had not even told anybody that her name was going to be Sarah. We hadn't talked about names. It was so early. We didn't know she was a girl, but in my spirit, I kind of I just a sense that she
mhm,
was a girl, and the Lord confirmed that in the dream.
mhm,
And it wasn't like all of a sudden everything was better and, rosy and my life was all going well. It was it was just that He was there, He was
mhm,
present, and He made Himself
mhm,
known to me in the way that I needed to know Him. I don't think any other way would have helped. I needed to know that she was safe, and I knew that, I guess I really hadn't even thought of that up to that time, but at that point, it was like I knew she was safe, I knew she was with him, and I knew he was with me.
Mm.
And even though I was so angry and just had really pushed him away, he wasn't he wasn't leaving me. He wasn't turning away and running away because I was so angry. He was just lovingly there. He was present. It was like like when you're sick and as a child and your mom, you just count. Your mom is right there or your dad is right there, there you can count on them being there. And as much as I pushed the Lord away, he didn't go.
Mm.
He felt I was worth staying. And
Mm.
that was such a pivotal time in my faith, I would say,
Mm.
and it had me reconsider everything I thought about the Lord, because at that time, everything I thought of the Lord was very controlling, and I don't mean that in a bad way, just sovereign. That's the only creator and sovereign were probably the only attributes of the Lord I really thought about
Mm.
until then. And then it was like, this is an imminent God, a God who's near. Um,
Mm.
this Lord is a compassionate Lord. He didn't have to give me this vision of my daughter. He could have left me where I was, it- but he didn't. And he's a very compassionate Lord. So I saw some completely different aspects of the Lord, and
Mm.
and he knew that's what I needed.
Mm.
And so that started a journey over a 8-year span. I had 5 total miscarriages, and I gave birth to 4 babies.
Mm.
So at that time, it was a very up and down roller coaster existence, I would say. And it was still I had a very transactional idea of faith still. And I had to really grow through that. And the Lord did take me through that, through those trials of those 8 years and beyond. He I kind of thought I was very misguided, and I thought if I put in the right coins,
Mm.
and do the right things, the Lord is going to bless me in the way that I thought I should be blessed. And when that's I think what was so devastating about the first miscarriage was I thought I was a good person and I thought I was doing the right things.
Mm.
And he didn't hold up on his bargain in my mind.
Mm.
And so I had to relearn who the Lord was and have different expectations of who he was for me.
Mm.
And that was profound. And it's been a long journey to really get to understand who he was
Mm.
and to be able to trust then that whether it was miscarriage, whether I had loss, or whether I had uh, experienced the birth of a beautiful little boy or my little girl, that he was good regardless of which one happened.
Mm.
His goodness doesn't change based on what my circumstances looked like. And that was a totally different concept and an important one for me to learn.
Mm. Oh, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's um it's evident how you like as you've gone through all these
Mm.
incredibly tough times, how the Lord's been there with you each step of the way, and you're
Yeah.
getting stronger and stronger in your understanding of the Lord and in your faith in Him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's a journey. I think we all have different faith journeys, and
Mm.
the Lord, that's also the Lord is so individual, and he knows exactly what each of us needs.
Mm.
And so that's what he provides.
Mm.
That's why none of our walks are the same. You can talk to a million Christians and everybody's faith journey is different, and the Lord meets them individually. And
Mm.
that's such a gracious Lord to be able to do that for us, to meet us in the way that we need him to meet us.
Absolutely. Julie, you shared about your dream, and it was a profound dream and one of
Mhm.
your darkest times. Can
Mhm.
you share maybe how it changed your perspective? You made that
Yeah.
clear, but how do you think it prepared you as well for what was coming?
Yeah. I think it softened me and opened me to the possibility of experiencing God in a new way,
Mm,
of knowing God in a different way, and that was big. I needed to expand my understanding of who he was. I
mm,
had a very little God, and he was only one little aspect of life,
mm,
and God is so much bigger than that, and so I really needed to understand that, and and he prepared me for dealing with the unexpected
mm,
in a healthy manner with faith and with patience and kind of an attitude of endurance,
mm,
perseverance, because I needed that. I would need that to come, and he knew it. And
mm,
again, that's the beauty of it, because every live birth would be an up, of course, a high in my
yeah.
life, and um, it's- then I would experience a couple miscarriages, and that would just have me questioning kind of all over again. Like, I don't get it. Why?
Mm,
Why would you allow such beauty to be born into this world in the birth of my children, and then such ashes and um, just devastation
mm,
when my next two were taken before I could even hold them. I didn't understand it, and I felt I should, which is kind of silly, because now, through all this walking with him and getting to know him, why should I think I could really understand him? He wouldn't be a very big God if I could understand him, because I don't have a very big mind. I
mm,
and to I shouldn't be able to understand the God of the universe.
mm,
Now, that doesn't mean we can't understand some of who he is, and he reveals enough. He gives us just enough.
mm,
And so in the words of scripture, his his character is revealed in a profound manner, in the way that the scripture describes him as loving and compassionate and kind, but also as wrathful and holy and righteous and sovereign and omniscient and omnipresent and omnipotent and all of those. So we can understand bits of his
mm,
character, but we can't expect to grasp the wholeness of the
yeah.
fullness of who the Lord is.
Yeah.
And so it seems awful presumptuous to me now, looking back,
Mm,
but most of us, I think, go through that phase.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's a faith, that's part of our faith journey as well.
Mm, mm. Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking of the scripture in Isaiah where it talks about his thoughts and his ways are so
Mhm.
much higher than ours. And
Yeah,
for us to think that we can somehow grasp the things that he's thinking and doing almost feels entitled.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Of it, and we are very, I would say we're very proud
Mm,
people, and that's that pride, and that was that control attitude that I had, personality that I have.
mm,
I pride myself, I guess, on being a strong woman and being
mm,
able to handle things that come my way and being able to figure it out.
mm,
Uh, and when it doesn't go that way, it's I don't like it,
mm.
but it's good for me.
Yeah.
And that's what the Lord has done. So as He continued to take me through the lows of miscarriages and
Mm,
disability. We had disability early on with the birth of my son. My firstborn did not go as expected, and he was
mm,
born with an arm that was disabled and still
mm,
is to this day. And that took it, was a year, well, more than just a year, but the first year was a very traumatic year of adjusting to what that might look like, and having a child who did have a disability. But the Lord knew I needed to be prepared in that manner as well, because
mm,
our third live birth and our only daughter was born with, we didn't know it at the time, but she has a genetic condition, and is intellectually um, delayed to the
mm,
point where she will always need to be cared for. And it was a slow revelation of that. When she was born, she was born at the kind of on the backside of experiencing another couple miscarriages. So we were
mm,
just thrilled to get to full term and have our little girl. and to have the girl too was just an added, of course, we would have loved
Mm.
boys, girls, didn't matter to us,
Yeah.
but having that little girl was something special, and I just
Mm.
remember on the phone, it took, probably a few hours before we realized there was anything, different about her, but and the only thing that was just a hole in the roof of her mouth, which is called a
Mm.
cleft palate,
Mm.
and hers was just in the soft palate, so it was in the very back of her throat, so you couldn't see it, she had no cleft lip or
Mhm.
anything, you couldn't see it externally, and so it took the doctor a little while to find it, but basically that caused the nursing and feeding for her was very difficult because she couldn't create suction because she had that
Mm.
extra hole in her mouth.
Mm.
But that's all we knew. So I distinctly remember talking to my mom, calling her on the phone and just saying, "Yeah, we have she's born, she's healthy. We have this little girl and she's perfect except for just a little hole in the roof of her mouth. But
Mm.
but that can be repaired at about 11 months and so she's just perfect." And that those words are interesting because she is perfect in the way that God made her, but she certainly wasn't perfect in the eyes of what we were expecting or in
Yeah.
the eyes of what the world would call
Mm.
perfect.
Mm.
And, her disabilities were revealed over over years, actually, and we still aren't quite sure what that is looks like in the
Mm.
future, and we'll get into where she's at, right now, but she was so at 6 weeks, she quit breathing on us,
Oh, wow.
and so we had gone through the whole route then of ambulance drive and figuring out what that looked like,
Mm.
and after a bunch of tests, it was basically found out that she had a really severe case of gastroesophageal reflux
Mm.
disorder, which is some people call it GERD,
Yeah.
and it's not that uncommon, but hers was a very
Mm.
severe case,
Mm.
and so as the acid would come back up, it would scorch her throat and make her throat clamp down, and so she would quit breathing. So we were sent home with medicine and a
Mm.
monitor and just said, "You don't need to worry because if she quits breathing and passes out, when she passes out, she'll start breathing again. So,
Mm. Mm.
it'll be okay." It wasn't,
Mm.
I suppose it's comforting in some ways, but in other ways, it's like you don't, I couldn't,
Mm.
I couldn't sit there and let my daughter pass out. That
Yeah.
wasn't something that was,
Scary.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
then we also found out that she did have some heart anomalies. She had a couple holes in her heart that did not close
Mm.
and that they usually close at birth or prior to birth, and hers did not. But that too, they figured that they would close, and it wasn't really a cause for great concern. But it was all we were starting to see a pattern of all things midline.
Mm.
Everything that seemed to be wrong with her was midline, which seemed to indicate some sort of a genetic thing.
Mm.
And I already had two boys. I knew what the developmental milestones should look like, and we realized probably about 4 or 5 months that she really wasn't meeting those milestones, and so we
Mm.
started having her evaluated, and that gave her the, label, I guess, of developmental delay. That's about as far as we got for a number of years, and we just kept she wasn't sitting up when she should have, she wasn't rolling up when she should have, she
Mm.
wasn't talking when she should have, so the whole kinda gamut of stuff continued to roll out, and we finally, I don't know if it was, maybe she was probably 2, maybe 2 and a half, when we got a diagnosis of velocardial facial syndrome,
Mm.
Brinson's syndrome, which a doctor in New York had discovered and given his name to this set of, uh, anomalies or symptoms that would give us this genetic condition.
Mm.
And I just didn't have a good feeling of that setup. I did not think that she had that syndrome. So I started doing my own research. I told you I'm
Mm.
a little bit stubborn and controlling. I wanted to know what it was. I wanted to know
Mm.
what to do about it, and then we could fix it. So I did my own research and realized I just don't think she has this. So I sent
Mm.
all of her records and her pictures to that doctor in New York who had named the syndrome. And to his credit, he responded very quickly.
Mm.
I really wasn't sure I'd ever get a response from him because
Mm.
doctors are busy and they don't have time for for everything.
Speculations.
Yes, yes. But
Yeah.
he responded immediately and said, "No,
Mm.
she does not have that." So
Mm.
again, we were left without a diagnosis besides developmental delay. We
Mm.
didn't know what was causing it, and that was a real concern, a real stumbling block for me for a while because I felt I needed this roadmap of what was going to happen so I could prepare myself and so I could find ways to fix it to make it better.
Mm. Mhm.
So that was a difficult time.
Wow.
I had to again learn to surrender that why and
Mm.
um, that map of where I
Yeah.
was going.
Yeah. So, Julie, raising children, especially those with health challenges, can be incredibly demanding, right? So,
Yeah,
what has that been like, and how has your faith helped you navigate these
yeah.
obstacles?
Oh, faith has been everything. Faith
Mm.
has been everything. If the Lord hadn't brought me through what He did, the miscarriages, the way He did, the loss of my first baby, the way He did,
Mm.
um, I don't know that I could be the mom that I needed to be for Rachel,
Mm.
and probably for the boys as well. We did have a boy. After a couple miscarriages, we had another little boy, which rounded out our family, and and I I needed to know that I could trust him with each that's one of the reasons I mean, besides maybe maybe stubbornness again, but that's one of the reasons I continued to try, that I wanted to continue to try to have children,
Mm.
and was because I was growing in to trust the Lord, and I thought whether we have another child with disabilities, since we didn't know what caused it, we didn't know, it was a genetic thing. We didn't know if we and nothing was conclusive in our genetic testing, so we didn't know if we could pass something on or not, but
Mm.
I just felt like the Lord was gonna be with us in those, and that was a huge faith step for me to even get to that point. So that I was um, so lost early on that I I would not I maybe would have still continued forward under my own strength, but I really that gave me so much peace when our last son was born to know that the Lord would not abandon me, would not leave me, and
Mm.
wherever we were at with Him, He would meet us there.
Mm.
So I it was that was incredibly important for me, and I was a very I would say I was a good person, but I was also very self-centered, and um, I'm set in such a different way. The Lord brought me to such a stronger faith and to such a more a nicer person, a more beautiful
Mm.
person, with a faith that can bend without breaking,
Mm.
and um, and so I needed that grow with our children. My oldest son went through several different surgeries and experiences with his arm,
Mm.
and so that was a journey of faith there that we had to really trust him. The doctors weren't always uh, nice. Sometimes they were the one doctor in particular was very, dismissive of our son's disabilities, and so we really had to persevere. So I needed to be strong
Mm.
and advocate for him and for our daughter and for our sons, just even that are normally developing children. As a parent, we have to be advocating for our children, and I think it's even more critical
Mm.
now in today's world
Yeah.
that we have to be strong in that, and the Lord strengthened me to do that. And we also have to um, let go of our expectations, because
Mm.
anybody who's a mother knows that our children don't go the way we expect them to. They don't do the things we
Mm.
expect.
Mm-hmm.
Parenthood is nothing like you expect it to be.
Yeah.
And I thought was could be this awesome mom, and our children would just
Mm.
respond to that, and you quickly realize, I think, as a mom, that they're gonna do a lot of things that you said your children would never do, and, so
Mm.
so that is also part of the faith journey, and part of what the Lord does in your life
Mm.
is preparing for that, and to hold on to certain things, like, the where he tells us that, raise them in the faith and they will not depart. They'll come back to that. And holding on to being able to hold on to that, and
Mm.
knowing that whatever we face, the Lord is with us.
Mm.
Right now, it's so critical. My daughter is 26 years old, still lives with us,
Mm.
and will for as long as we can see anyway, into the foreseeable future. And so that requires, I'm not a young mom anymore,
Mm.
and that can be pretty draining. for me to to be a caregiver now,
Mm.
and that was quite a transition from mother to caregiver. Yes, I'm still
Yeah.
mother,
Mm.
but my role has changed, and now she's an adult,
Mm.
and so it's a very different process, I think,
Mm.
to get to that,
Mm.
and it was incredibly important that I um, could and can continue to surrender a lot of that to the Lord, which I would not have been able to do had the Lord not taken me on my faith journey. One of the things that haunts me a lot, and I have to be very careful about, is Rachel's future.
Mm.
To dwell on that too much, because she'll always have to live with someone, and that's not always pretty.
Mm.
And we hear the stories of, especially a child who is she is nonverbal functionally. She has some words that we can understand, but
Yeah.
outside, people from the outside
Mm.
would only understand a handful of words that she has,
Mm.
and so the real possibility of her being taken advantage of is
Yeah.
there.
Mm.
And so I can become very panicked, and have become very panicked, when I start thinking about her future and what will
Mm.
happen when my husband and I are no longer here. I don't know that I could have handled that.
Mm.
If Rach would have been plopped into our lives as our first child, if I hadn't gone through the suffering of the miscarriages and Daniel's disabilities, and another one of our children had learning disabilities that we had to
Mm.
navigate, and if 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 those would not have been in my life, and I wouldn't have had to learn how to lean on the Lord and how to surrender my strength for His strength,
Mm.
because um, my strength is nothing. It's a drop compared to the Lord's,
Mm.
and my knowledge is nothing. It's
Mm.
a thimbleful, not even a thimbleful.
Mm.
But He knows it all, and He has her future before we're ever in that future.
Mm.
And I've had to learn how to surrender that. And it's not an easy thing. It's not a clean break. I struggle
Mm.
with that a lot. But I know He'll meet her in that. When we're gone, He's the father to the fatherless, right?
Mm.
He's promised to be there. And our children are His. They're only to us on loan.
Mm.
And so um, He loves her more than I do. And that's where I really had to get to that acceptance of that, and to set aside the whys, to really hold on to what's He doing in this,
Mm.
and what's He preparing me for, what's He preparing other people for, what's He have in this for us.
Mm.
um, and when I changed my mindset to that, it was a lot easier, I guess, to
Mm.
surrender her to Him.
Mm.
And as I started digging into knowing Him better, because I
Mm.
needed that reminder of who He was, that reminder that He is imminent, He's near, but He's
Mm.
also transcendent,
Mm.
otherworldly. And that was incredibly important to me, because He had to be above my circumstances, or He couldn't
Mm.
handle the
Mm.
circumstances, because I certainly can't handle them. And
Mm.
if He's on the same plane and the same level as me,
Mm.
then I don't have faith. I can't trust that He can handle it either. But
Yeah.
knowing that He's transcendent, that He's omniscient, that He's,
Mm.
all powerful, that's pivotal in
Mm.
order for me to surrender her future to Him,
Yeah.
and to her, her present even.
Mm.
He has her. We don't know what's coming. We don't know if there could be some major health issue popping up. Thankfully, He's spared us from some of the health issues that so many deal with, which
Mm.
my heart goes out to, because some of the daily challenges, we don't have as much of the daily challenges, at least health wise, as so many do that are in the throes of caregiving and raising children with special needs.
Mm.
So I'm
Mm.
grateful for that. There's so many blessings. Um,
Yeah.
just learning to embrace her for who she is, disabilities and all,
Mm.
was another huge mindset change. The whole world of disability, I would not have stepped into.
Mm.
I know some people do willingly. I would have not. I needed to
Yeah.
go kicking and screaming, and the Lord knew that, and
Mm.
He wanted me to, to be there, and to be in that world, obviously.
Yeah.
So
Wow, Julie, you've been on some road, haven't you?
it's been a journey, but
Mm.
I you have to look back and see that that everything the Lord allows, He has a
Yeah,
purpose in it.
absolutely. And I think what's evident is your your surrendered heart and your grateful heart. And I think that comes from, like you're saying, how the Lord's been teaching you and honing
Yeah.
you to be more like Him.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
usually doesn't come from the easy times, does it?
No, it doesn't. No. So,
And look at oh, go ahead. I'm
no,
sorry.
no, I'm sorry. Carry on.
I'm just saying it takes getting to the other side and looking back, and
Mm,
of course, we're not on the other side, but,
yeah.
we're far enough along the journey, I can look back and
Mm,
I can see his fingerprints on that
yeah.
journey,
Yeah.
um, and you can't see that in the moment, and
Mm,
that's why I'm telling my story. That's why I need to share, because
mm,
when you're in the throes of it, you can't see it, and you need to hold on to sometimes you just need to hold on to the faith of someone else
mm,
and see that you can just wait long enough, you can get to that point
yeah.
where you can look back and see his faith.
Yeah. Um, so,
Or his faithfulness, I guess I should say.
yeah. So, I guess going on from what you've just said, what are some of
Yeah.
the biggest lessons you've learned then about God's nature?
Mm. I have learned that we have victory, and
Mm,
he is the victor, and so just because life looks broken here,
mm,
it is broken here,
mm,
it won't stay that way, and so we can trust that our circumstances are redeemed. The Lord is the Savior, He is the
mm,
Redeemer. And so, I've learned that it doesn't matter how angry we get at him,
mm,
he continues to love with an everlasting love. And one of the most important things I've learned is that his grace, yes, his grace is sufficient. He's a very gracious Lord,
mm,
but he's not going to give us the grace for tomorrow. He's going to give us a grace for this moment.
mm,
We so often want, like, I want to look in the future and I want him to tell me. I want to know
mm,
exactly how he's going to provide. And
mm,
I want to experience that grace for then.
mm,
And that's not how the Lord operates. He says, "No, no, no, Julie. You need to trust me. I'm going to give you the grace for this moment. I'm going to help you through this moment.
mm,
I'm going to give you light to see this next step. I'm going to illuminate that. But you need to trust me for the rest, because if I show it to you all for one thing, I couldn't
mm,
even understand it, because we can't understand that. We don't have the minds. We have very finite minds. We can't understand the ways of the Lord. But also, where's the faith in that?
mm,
And the Lord wants our surrendered heart. He wants us to be able to trust Him as our Father, as our sustainer. So
mm,
those were some very important things that I've learned about the Lord. I've learned that He can handle it all, and He
mm,
can handle my anger as well.
mm,
He gave us feelings. Now, He's going to do things to, I think, pull us out of our um, depression and our dependence on ourselves. He's gonna allow things in our lives, and that perhaps is another one of the more important things I've learned, is that everything that I've experienced, God has allowed or ordained. He's sovereign. He has allowed or
mm,
ordained it all. I may not like it, but I don't have to like it. He's not asking for my permission or my and he's not as much after my happiness as he is after my surrendered life and
mm,
my heart, and my salvation. He
mm,
wants That's what he's most concerned about, is what does eternity look like for me and for my daughter and for my children. And he may he doesn't I don't think, since he's a loving God and a
mm,
gracious God, he doesn't love the things that the hard things in our lives, the things that are so difficult. But he knows better to than to keep us from those things. Honestly,
mm,
he knows that we need those
mm,
things, and he provides or allows those things, to those hard seasons, to prepare us to surrender to him and to be able to trust him,
mm.
and to give our to really to be willing to walk with him and let him in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Like when we go through the hard times, that's when we let him into our lives, don't we? And that's when
Yeah.
his promises that at sometimes might feel distant they, we come to see them as they're meant for us.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, there's time I did not
Mm.
I doubted, I knew his promises. I was raised in the
Mm.
church. I knew that the Lord promised us all kinds of things,
Mm.
abundance and shelter and all kinds of stuff. His love and his presence. But I didn't always feel those for me.
Mm.
They seemed like they were promises for everybody else,
Mm.
uh, and not for me. But so I needed to learn sort of who this Lord was. I needed to know who he was, what his character was, that he could not fail me, honestly, because he is all of his attributes perfectly. He is perfectly loving, but he's also perfectly holy. He's perfectly sovereign, but he's also perfectly kind and
Mm.
perfectly gracious and perfectly near, even though he's also perfectly otherworldly and far.
Mm.
I needed to know that I could trust him without a doubt, because then I knew I could trust his promises even when I didn't see
Yeah.
their fulfillment in my life.
Mm.
Because again, it comes back to expectations. We expect them to look a certain way,
Yeah.
and the Lord knows better. So they don't
Mm.
always
Mm.
look that way. But
Mm.
when we know who the Lord is, and that's why I ended up writing a book that I wrote, because it's called Sometimes I Forget, because I
Mm.
forget. I
Mm.
forget that his promises are for me. I forget who the Lord is.
Mm.
And I need that reminder of who he is, because then I know his promises are for me.
Mm.
But if we don't know the one who makes the promises, how can we trust those promises?
Yeah, absolutely. So about this book that you've mentioned,
Mhm.
sometimes I forget.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write it?
I was, again, which is tends to be my default, I was
Yeah.
lamenting and concerned about Rachel's future, and was really kind of in a season of what's going to happen, and I
Mm.
have to have it all figured out. And so I was writing. I have a blog, and I was writing a post for that blog, and that's kind of what the whole thing was just pouring out, like, you know I how am I gonna, how is the future gonna unfold, what who's I'm so concerned about Rachel's future, and I'm
Mm.
just, panicked about it. And then I kind of regrouped, and I always want to give my readers hope. So I needed to turn this blog post around and find hope in there. And so I
Mm.
started reminding myself that all these attributes of the Lord, I just started pouring them out. But
Mm.
but I need to remember, Lord, that you are sovereign. You
Mm.
weren't surprised when she was born with that hole in the roof of her mouth. You weren't surprised when she quit breathing. None of that surprised him,
Mm.
because he was sovereign. And he's loving, and he loves her more than I do. So he's going to plan for her. He's going to
Mm.
provide for her. Um, so I started pouring all that out. And then my literary agent and I were just discussing book ideas. And the Lord kept bringing that post to
Mm.
mind,
Mm.
and just said, how, and I realized how important that post was for me, and that idea to just, because I knew the Lord, I could trust him. That
Mm.
idea was so important to me in my faith journey. And so we just came up with that. I just said, well, I think this is so important. I think other people need
Mm.
it. And so, at the time, I was only going to do 30 attributes of God, and my
Okay.
publisher said, well, we would really like, to experience more. So could you do
Mm.
60 attributes? And I said, of course I could. And that was my strength talking. And I quickly
Mhm.
realized I did not have the capability of doing that.
Mm.
So it was the Lord graciously
Mm.
provided, insight into who he was, enough for me to write, my story. And there's a few other pieces. Each chapter is a snippet
Mm.
of my story, or
Okay.
there's a few others that are other people's, but most of it has to do with the things that I've learned. and
Mm.
and then they relate to each attribute. There's 60 chapters, well, probably
Mhm.
61, because there's a conclusion as well.
Mhm.
And then it quickly goes into the Lord's, that attribute, and how that attribute helped me through the situation, or comforted me in the situation, and a takeaway and a prayer around
Mm.
each prayer starts. Sometimes I forget, Lord, that you are fill it in,
Yeah.
sovereign,
Yeah.
loving, gracious, kind, immanent,
Mm.
immutable. His unchanging nature, is just critical, I
Mm.
think, to everything,
Mm.
that he doesn't change, so we can trust him. He's not going to ever become um, different than what he already is. So
Mm.
we can stand on him. He's
Mm.
that firm foundation that we need to have.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, so the book was born, and my faith was again stretched and strengthened as I tried to get this little
Mm.
pea brain of mine, this to understand this immense, incomprehensible Lord.
Mm.
And so it was good. It was a
Mm.
wonderful journey for me, and I think it'll be very encouraging to people walking through all
Mm.
kinds of, whether it's whether you're in the deep throes of a very, very difficult season, or you're in the everyday hard mundaneness of young motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think knowing the Lord is instrumental, is crucial for
Mm.
any part of our journey.
Mm.
To know him and know that his promises are for us. They're not just for you, they're also for me. They're not
Yeah.
just for us, but they're for our listeners.
Yeah.
That his promises we can trust, because we can trust the one who made those promises,
Mm. Yeah. You
and we can rest with that.
and listening to your story today, it just highlights everything that you're saying. That he's with us in the ups, the downs,
Mhm.
and yeah. No, thanks so much for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely.
Julie, you may have already touched on this, so reiterate it if you need to. But we do like to ask our guests, what is your one message?
I would say my one overall message is the Lord is trustworthy. He is trustworthy, and he will be with you in your circumstances, and he will see you through them. It doesn't look that way. Often it doesn't look that way at all. It looks like a complete disaster and an impossibility,
Mm.
but the Lord is a God of possibility in our impossibility. And since when we know
Mm.
the Lord, who is um, above all and with all, and when we really get to know him and who he is, then we can rest on those promises, and we can trust
Mm.
that he will be there, even if it doesn't look like it,
Mm.
even when we can't understand.
Yeah.
And one day we'll be able to look back and see that, or we'll know for certainty when we get to heaven with him, because it'll all be revealed.
Mm. Yeah, he is absolutely trustworthy.
Yeah,
Julie, thank you so much for sharing your incredible story with us today. Your journey
it
is
was
just
a
truly
blessing.
inspiring, and I'm sure that our listeners will take a lot of hope and strength from it.
And that is my prayer.
Mm.
That's exactly why I speak out.
Mm.
Is we need to know that we need to sometimes lean on other people's faith
Mm.
as we walk through ours and grow in ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everyone listening, be sure to check out Julie's new book, Sometimes I Forget, which is available now. And as always, thanks for tuning in to What's the Story. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. And remember, no matter the challenge, there's always a way forward. Until next time, bye for now.
Bye-bye.
And just like that, we have reached the end of another fascinating conversation. Now remember to check out Crowd Church at www.crowd.church, even if you might not see the point of church. You see, we are a digital church on a quest to discover how Jesus can help us live a more meaningful life. We are a community, a space to explore the Christian faith, and a place where you can contribute and grow. And you are welcome at Crowd Church. Don't forget to subscribe to the What's the Story podcast on your favorite podcast app, because we've got a treasure trove of inspiring stories coming your way, and we would basically hate for you to miss any of them. And just in case no one has told you yet today, remember, you are awesome. Yes, you are. Created awesome. It's just a burden you have to bear. What's the Story is a production of Crowd Church. Our fantastic team, including Anna Kettle, Sadaf Bainon, and me, Matt Edmondson, and Tanya Hutzalak, work behind the scenes tirelessly to bring you all these fabulous stories. Our theme song is a creative work of Josh Edmondson. And if you're interested in the transcript or show notes, head over to our website, whatsthestorypodcast.com. And whilst you're there, sign up for our free weekly newsletter to get all of this goodness delivered straight to your inbox. So that's it from all of us this week here at What's the Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. We'll catch you next time. Bye.